So I am so excited to welcome you all to the second day of the Yale Philanthropy Conference with this conversation on efforts to strengthen governance in Africa. I'm delighted to be joined by two, hopefully three, incredible women who are all leading change to improve civil society, politics, and governance in their countries. So to introduce myself, my name is Piper O'Keefe, and I am a second-year master's student at Yale's Jackson Institute for Global Affairs, studying community-led development and U.S. foreign policy. And joining us on this panel today are Ka Wala, Renu Udwala, and Dr. Obi Ageli Ezekiswili. So to introduce Ka, Ka is a Cameroonian politician, entrepreneur, and activist. She is the CEO of the firm Strategies, a 26-year-old leadership and management consulting firm. She went into politics in 2007, and on April 30th, 2011, she was elected as the president of the Cameroon People's Party and the party candidate for the 2011 presidential elections. She's the first woman to have run for president in Cameroon and remains one of the foremost opposition leaders in a country where the president has been in power for almost 40 years. Ka is known for her acute analysis of the issues Africa is facing, from security to the economy, from democracy to justice. Beyond analysis, she is amongst those who bring solutions to these challenges at continental, regional, national, and local levels. Her firm Strategies works with local and national governments, the African Union, and the UN, as well as private sector companies, bringing solutions to Africa's challenges. And joining us later will be Renu Udwala, who is the project director of HUBNGR, a human rights advocate, a community organizer, and an influencer focused primarily on issues of equity, justice, humanity, and community advancement. Spurred by police brutality in Nigeria and beyond, Renu has become a key player in the work to confront the systems and structures that have led to the mass incarceration and police killings of Nigerians. She has been featured in publications from many national and international media outlets, including BBC, CNN, and many others. She has also won numerous accolades for her work, including being named the Women of the Year for Advocacy in 2021 from Her Network, one of LLA's 2021 100 Most Inspiring Women in Nigeria, and part of NBC Washington's 31 Women Creating a Positive Impact in Africa, among more. And finally, our moderator is Dr. Obi. Dr. Obi is the founder and CEO of Human Capital Africa, the founder of the Fixed Politics Initiative, and a founder and chairperson of the School of Politics, Policy, and Governance, which recently graduated its first class of Nigerian leaders, and a senior economic advisor at the African Economic Development Policy Initiative. Formerly, she was the vice president of the World Bank Africa region. She also served as Minister of Education and Minister of Mineral Resources of Nigeria and was a co-convener of the Bring Back Our Girls campaign. She was a presidential candidate in the 2019 elections in Nigeria. She is a senior fellow at the Jackson Institute, and I was lucky enough to take her seminar this past semester. So I'm honored to welcome her back to Yale again as a moderator for this panel. So as Dr. Obi leads Ka and Renu in a conversation about the needs and opportunities of governance in Africa and how funders can support local leaders, please feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. We'll spend the last 15 minutes answering them, and we look forward to having this conversation. So Dr. Obi, over to you.
Well, I'm excited that we are together to discuss this very important topic of strengthening African governance, and that I'll be doing this with my dear friend, my dear sister, Ka Wala. Ka and I have a way of just chatting about issues of governance on our continent. And we don't just chat, we get to do things to improve governance on our continent. And Ka knows how very much enamored of her I am and of the work that she does. So let's start this conversation really by my asking Ka what she actually thinks could possibly be in a post-COVID, well, in a gradually dwindling influence of COVID era, what are the toughest issues, and what are the opportunities that you see going forward within the African context of governance?
Mhm. Thank you so much, Dr. Obi. And it's always a pleasure to be a part of a discussion with you. I have to tell you that I'm in Washington, D.C. It's my hotel room behind me, and with our dear friends of Vital Voices. So we've been having a lot of discussion um, about governance in the last couple of days. And I would say, um, sub-Saharan Africa was less hit on the health aspect of COVID than the rest of the world. We still don't quite know why, but we did not have the health catastrophe that everybody was expecting. I think, unfortunately, we then sort of took our eyes. I think, unfortunately, we then sort of took our eyes off COVID and did not on the continent look at the economic impact of COVID, which is devastating for the world, but I think most, especially for sub Saharan Africa. And in this moment where the biggest challenge, to answer your question, the biggest challenge is that the democratic methods, the democratic systems for citizens to express their evaluation of governance. So to be able to say, yes, you're doing well, and therefore we're going to keep you in power, or no, you're not doing well, and you need to be voted out. In most of sub-Saharan Africa, the mechanisms for election, for democratic debate, for true political discussion have been kidnapped and captured by a very small group of people. This is true in Central Africa, where I am from, and you know, Dr. Obi, that I call it the last bastion of the dictators, where the dictators, we have elections, but the dictators have turned elections into a tool that legitimizes their power. And so in my region, you have my president, who is going to be 40 years in power in November. You have Obiangema, who is Equatorial Guinea, 38 years. You have Chad and Gabon, where the power has passed from the father to the son. So I think we are the worst case scenario. But even in countries like Nigeria, Kenya, where you see elections taking place, these elections, citizens do not believe in them. Citizens do not believe that these elections actually are the expression of their will, and that these elections are truly a measure of those who are governing. The result, Dr. Obi, is what you and I would never have dreamed of even 5 years ago. It's the coup d'etats. In the last 12 months in Africa, we have had 4 coup d'etats. Incredible. None of us would have thought that. But the coup d'etats are a symptom of the fact that we have closed off the democratic means of changing those who govern. We have left people in power who are not delivering. They're not delivering water. They're not delivering electricity. They're not delivering education. The very, very basics. They're not delivering security. The very basics that citizens can ask for. And the result is that people then go to the extreme means of coup d'etat. And I am very afraid for us, Dr. Obi, in this post-COVID moment, because on top of all this now comes an economic crisis, comes a moment which is where things are actually going to get worse for citizens. So in everything that we are doing, there is urgency. There is great urgency.
Interesting that you ended on the note of urgency. But people are sort of saying, okay, when things were fairly normal with a lot of other countries around the world and friends of Africa, there was absolutely no urgency about addressing the developmental challenges, neither on the part of those who govern Africa, nor on the part of the rest of the development community. What makes you think that that urgency will happen at a time like this?
I'm afraid, unfortunately, that we will be pushed to urgency, as we are seeing today in Mali, in Guinea, in Burkina Faso. When I do not agree with coup d'états, of course. We should not arrive there. But many of those who carried out the coup d'états in the last 12 months, when now ECOWAS came rushing in, the African Union came rushing in, and the rest of the world came rushing in to say, oh no, you cannot do this, you must go back to civilian rule, coup is not proper. And they asked, well, where were you when our president was changing the constitution illegally to stay for a third mandate? Where were you when there was a constitutional coup d'etat going on? So I think that we're going to be pushed to urgency by crisis, because I think we cannot imagine that Mali, Burkina, and Guinea are exceptions. On the contrary, I interpret them to be the alarm bell, because these are relatively small countries in terms of population, where things can be contained. I am much more worried about my very big neighbor, where you are, Dr. Obi, and where you and I know that things are truly falling apart with the security situation in the northern part of the country, with the economic crisis that is hitting. So I think certainly as an African actor, I am accelerating the work that I am doing. Certainly as an African actor, I am raising the alarm with all of our partners to say we need to act, and we need to act quickly, because the population is not going to wait. When things get really, really bad, we will see more of these crises on the continent if we have not acted.
So essentially, you're saying that if we don't act, we'll be forced to act. Exactly. And when we're forced to act, we just lose the capacity to be deliberate in the solutions to address the crisis, the many crises that we have.
Now, exactly.
Why is it that we don't seem to see this level of urgency, even on the part of the citizens, until an extract of those that belong within military establishments go ahead and act? Why do we not have collective action on the part of citizens to stand against any illegitimization of their democratic space?
Mm-hmm. Dr. Obi, that is a complex question, but number one in this moment, my number one answer is violence. In Cameroon, as you know, we have just spent the last 18 months getting our people out of jail for protests that were happening in late 2020. We were able to get members of our movement out of jail. There are still members of other political parties who have been sentenced to 5 years, 7 years. For some of them didn't even march. It is incredible. Some people were collected from their homes, and now they are serving sentences of 5 years, of 7 years in horrid prisons because they entertained the idea that they could exercise their constitutional right of nonviolent protest. You know very well what happened with the SARS protests in Nigeria. This was a moment where citizens were the SARS protests were extraordinary. We were so energized in that moment in Africa. We were so excited. And then what happened? The bloody shutdown by the state violence. And I have to say that our states repeatedly and continuously use violence and violate the most fundamental human rights. And it is extremely frustrating to see these presidents who have signed on to the International Declaration of Human Rights, who have signed on to the African Charter for Democracy and Good Governance, who have signed on to all these international charters. They shoot at their citizens on Monday, and then on Tuesday, they are at the UN or at the African Union giving a speech, and nobody is asking them a question. Nobody is asking them, what happened? Why are you violating these fundamental human rights? So I think sorry, I can't hear you again.
You can't hear me again?
Yes, now it's working, yeah?
You can hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So you are basically saying that contrary to the feeling that African citizens are not demanding, they are actually demanding, but that the demand is receiving a reaction of brutality and repression, which does not cost the governments that perpetrate such acts anything. And therefore, there is absolutely no consequence to brutalizing citizens at home. And that is therefore reducing the frequency of agitation by citizens collectively. That seems to be what you're saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Dr. Obi. African citizens are demanding.
Do we wait for coups, or do we, as citizens, persist until the dynamics turn in the favor of the collective citizens' agitation? Which one should it be? Coups or citizens on the street, completely unfazed by the brutality and the things that happen with having to agitate for freedom until freedom comes? Which one? Which is the least or the lesser of the two ugly situations that we're faced with?
Mm-hmm. We must persist. We must persist. It is our lives that are in danger. And there is no question about it. We are first and foremost responsible for our lives, our future, our countries. So we are the first people who are responsible, and we must persist in the collective, as you say. I think we are in this moment where it is only collective action. It is only collective action that will make a change. It is collective action, which also means that we are ready as Africans to put our lives on the line, to be able to have countries that have justice, that have democracy, that have economic freedom and growth for everybody. So I think we must do that. And part of the urgency for me is for us to ramp up that collective action and to be able to carry it out. However, I'm also sending a clear message to our friends in the international community is that while we put our lives on the line, you are helping those who are violating our fundamental rights. You help them by never questioning. As you say, there is no price. There is no price for Mr. Biya shooting his own citizens unarmed, completely non-violent. There is no price for Mr. Buhari for what happened with NSAS. So the international community, one, these people should be questioned on the basis of the agreements. We enter into international relationships. We don't enter into them because we like X or we like Y. We have collective convictions. We have signed on to charters. We have signed on to certain fundamental documents, number one. Number two, Dr. Obi, I'm going to bring up the money, where there is also no consequence. Our governments, my government, the government of Cameroon, took $300 million for COVID, to fight against COVID. The same government carried out an audit and found in its own audit that they had stolen the money in a wide variety of creative ways. We wish they were so creative in finding solutions to our basic problems, but they had stolen a bulk of the money. So they got this money from the International Monetary Fund, and they went right back and got another 600 million IMF loan, despite the fact that there was evidence that they had stolen the COVID money. They went right back and got another loan. There is no financial consequence. Nobody is asking them for accountability. And these are loans. They're not grants. There's not money being given away. It's money that I have to pay back. My children have to pay back. My grandchildren will have to pay back. So this international infrastructure today is really shooting itself in the foot, because it is helping to maintain the dictators in place. It is helping to maintain those who are corrupt and who are mismanaging. And then the international, the Western world is shocked that there are people migrating at their borders, right? Then they're shocked that, oh, these Africans, they're getting on a boat and you're crossing over to Europe. Well, if you make people's lives impossible, they will find a way to survive. So it is in our collective best interest to revise fundamentally the way that this international infrastructure is working, even as we, as African citizens, do our fundamental part in collective action on the streets in our countries.
You raise very important points that would make us probe the issue of the global governance and how it intersects with governance at home on the continent. But we'll come back to that. Let me just ask, is there even any flicker of light that you see in terms of the supply side of governance on the continent? And where could that possibly be?
Oh, Dr. Obi, I see tremendous flickers of light. Thank goodness. Thank goodness that in this rather despairing picture, there are tremendous beacons of light. I'm talking to one of them right now. The other one is waiting to get on. Rinu, I absolutely love Rinu. I don't know, what is she, 19, 20? It's so extremely young and so extremely dedicated to the future of her country and of the continent. I think one exciting thing that's happening right now, I have been on spaces with Renew, with Nigerian activists, with activists from South Sudan, activists from Cameroon. The other day, I was talking on a space with women activists from Senegal. I think throughout the continent, the beacon of hope is that you have grassroots activists who are literally putting their lives on the line because they risk being shot at, they risk going to jail, and they still say, we have to act to get our countries back. We have to act for the fundamentals of justice, of democracy to be set into place. Look at the Sudanese. My goodness, look at the Sudanese. They have been shot at, they have been killed, they have suffered every violation of human rights that you can imagine, and yet they are back on the street. So the beacon of light, the hope, is in the African people, and we have to figure out how to support one another, how to structure ourselves and organize ourselves even better, because I truly believe that we can overcome with the energy that I see at the grassroots level in Africa.
So that's really empowering, because when you summarize all that you've just said, it's clear that at the end of the day, democracy belongs to the citizens. And for as long as we can find those who are prepared to defend democracy with all they've got, including their lives, ultimately, democracy will prevail, will triumph.
Yes. Yes.
In the light of the decline of democracy in the rest of the world, I mean, if you've seen in recent times, most of the indicators on democracy is saying that democracy is really not delivering, not just in economies like ours, but also in advanced democracies, whether it's in Europe or even America, where you're at. And so there is a tendency now to begin to get people to think about the East in terms of authoritarian rule. As one who's been in authoritarian governance, well, that doesn't even qualify to be called governance, authoritarian dictatorships. What would you say to any African who is thinking that, it's time to do away with democracy in Africa?
Say, that's the biggest mistake of our lives. That's the biggest mistake of our lives. I see, Africans feeling like, we've tried this democracy. That's what I hear. I hear Africans saying, listen, we've tried this democracy thing and it's not working. But my question is always, where did you try that democracy? Because having elections and having multiple parties is not democracy. Unless you can tell me that you have been able to institute the mechanism, the systems, and the culture of freedom of expression, of freedom of being able to contradict one another and to discuss solutions to our various problems together, unless you have been able to institute systems where you truly are able to alternate the different people who are getting to govern the country, where you have been able to, most importantly in Africa, you have given the freedom for the counter powers, that is the media, that is trade unions, that is the powers that balance the power of an executive in a country, where you truly have a legislature that can call the executive to book So when you have tried that, when you have, attempted to do that, and it doesn't work, then I say come back and let's have a discussion. But I do not believe, that what we are practicing for the most part in Africa today is democracy, and those who are doing rather well at it. So if you look at the Botswanas, you look at the South Africas, you look at the Cape Verde and the Mauritius and so on. Oh, those guys are they are not looking to let go of their democracy. On the contrary, they are fighting really hard to keep it. And Dr. Obi,
It's
very important.
interesting, Carl. It's interesting you talked about South Africa. I'm hearing citizens of South Africa say democracy has not delivered to us. A number of them who are thinking that the Chinese model offers a better alternative. So you see clearly that for citizens of our continent, the inability of democracy to produce growth, which is normally what we've seen in economic evidence. Yeah. The openness of democracy leads to openness of economy, and ultimately should lead to the market incentives that drive better performance in terms of growth and impact on citizens. Why do you think our own story with democracy and its correlation to economic performance is as dismal as it has been, such that by the year 2035, it is estimated that 90% of the world's poverty will be in Africa? Why did we not get it right with even the countries like Tanzania, like Senegal, that have been on the democratic path for as long as since their independence? What did we get wrong?
Two things, Dr. Obi. Number one, as I've said, we practiced a democracy. You said you were doing democracy, then you tied one hand behind your back, you tied one leg behind your back, and you were hopping along, and you were hoping to get the fruits of democracy. That will not happen. You have to be, democracy is tough. As we know, there is absolutely no perfect democracy. It is a continuous struggle, but at least you have to give yourself a chance. You have to put your 2 feet on the ground and your hands, and you have to really try to struggle along. I believe that most African countries did not do that. The second element is that economic governance is a whole other set of competencies. I work a lot, as you know, with the African regional institutions. I work a lot with our regional economic communities. I work a lot with the African Union. And what we see is that we are very good in Africa at developing strategies, very good at holding workshops and having nice talks and so on and so forth. And then we are very poor at actually implementing. We are very poor at actually implementing and holding ourselves to account. Setting objectives and meeting those objectives. And if we do not meet those objectives, there are consequences. Somebody gets fired, somebody does not get reelected, and so on. We are very, very poor at that, which has meant that we have not made the right economic choices for our countries. We have not been rigorous. We have not been rigorous with ourselves as far as economic growth is concerned. We have not, again, this capture has meant that people at the head of the state want to hold the economy as well. So they don't let go of it. They want to, you find in Africa this paradox where people in government are also the richest people in the country. How is that? You're supposed to create an economic framework for economic growth, not be the business person yourself. So I think we have not been rigorous in our economic governance at all, whether we are democracies or dictatorships, because it's possible as a dictatorship. Look at Rwanda. It's possible as a dictatorship to have very rigorous economic growth. Economic growth.
What you said about the privatization of the public space, the privatization of the benefits of democracy by those who are in the ruling class. And the only way that you can address this is to structurally reposition the role of the citizens.
Exactly.
Well, Ka, this has been quite fascinating. Unfortunately, it doesn't look to me like we got Renu. We still don't have Renu in.
Yes.
No, we don't.
She did say that she had joined the conference, but doesn't seem to me like she's on. Okay. I'm going to turn over to Piper briefly and find out if we have anyone with an interest to ask a question of Ka or even of myself. You can see what we've done is to have a bilateral conversation, which I hope that those of you who have signed on to this particular segment of this year's conference have found interesting. Piper, we got any questions?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Obi. And thank you, Ka, for your great insight today. So the first question we have is, Ka, you said that the hope is in the African people. We need to figure out how to support each other. So I just wonder, when you're thinking about that, how can the international community help to support you supporting each other?
Mm-hmm. Great. Yes. So you see, I mean, the relationship I have with Dr. Obi, I have with several others on the African continent who are doing, outstanding grassroots work. So one of the ways to support is to create the forums where we can come, yes, to discuss with you, but also where we can come to strategize amongst ourselves, to learn lessons from one another about the work we are doing on the ground and to build our capacity. As I said, there is tremendous grassroots leadership right now in Africa, and it's being led by women. It's being led by young people. So putting these people, just providing the logistics for these people to be put together in a room and have the ability to talk with one another in a structured, and I would say, medium and long term. So not a one-off event, but something where they would be able to come together somewhat regularly and be able to learn from one another, exchange, and even there's Renu.
Hello, why you're prepared to cut short your answer?
Yes. Yeah. Over to Renu.
How are we going to solve Africa's democracy deficit? How?
Okay, is this my question?
Your question.
Well, apologies for coming late. I had to rush. For African democracy, I host a sort of session with some of my speakers in a Twitter space, and somebody said something to me that came out really to me and said that Africa does not have one problem, right? It's many problems coming to one. So when we say, oh, give us one solution, it's like we're deluding ourselves, because it's a lot. And thank God we're talking about African democracy, not just one country's democracy, because it's like we all have the same issues, right? With Madam Carr, with Kenya, with Ghana, Uganda, everybody has the same issues. I think that the first place we start from is that our leaders do not recognize the fact that this government is supposed to be for the people, and the people are supposed to be included in this sort of government. It's supposed to be inclusive. That's what democracy is all about. It's about inclusiveness. So the way our leaders demonstrate or perform their sort of democracy, which seems to be different from the entire world, is that the people are separated from having a say. It's like the only time that the people matter to this kind of democracy is during elections, is when they need the people's votes. And immediately after the elections, then the people do not matter again. They can sit down in their homes while we run our own thing. And that's where I think the phrase that says that politics should not be left for politicians came in. Because in Africa, it's like we've left politics for politicians. So I think the first step we start from is understanding that the people have to be included. And the people themselves have to realize that power for the people, democracy for the people, this is for the people. It's not just a phrase. It's about you being an active participant in what we're talking about. You voting, all these people accountable, not shutting up when they want you to, making sure that their feet are constantly put to the fire once they get that public offices. So just got my answer short because time is fast spent. The first step, not the only step, is inclusiveness. The people have to be included in governance.
That's a really great answer. In the situation where you see clearly that the ruling class in Africa has no incentive to include, they have excluded over and over again, and there's been no consequence. So there's absolutely zero incentive. So the only thing you can have is a disincentive. What two disincentives do you think that citizens can work around?
All right, thank you very much, ma'am. I'll be talking about my perspective from a Nigerian perspective. You see, we Nigerian citizens seem to think that once you vote them into office and they don't include you in government, then just sit back and look at them, let them finish their 4 years. God will judge them. Let them finish their 4 years and they will leave, right? It's not about God judging them. God has given everybody, for those that believe in religion, the capacity, the capability, to rule ourselves, to make sure that our society is for the better, right? So that is not the voting them out, which is one of the steps or one of the incentives that citizens can use, is not even actually the only tool they have for the Nigerian case. I mean, you have the option of recalling these people if they are from the House of Reps or the Senate or whatever. You have that option of going around your community, making sure that the electorate who signed these people into power recall them and voting another person. Even during that 4 years, you have the option of pressing or putting pressure on the lawmakers to impeach these guys, send these guys out of power. But we do not understand the full capacity or capability that we have as citizens. So that's why we say, just wait, let's vote them out. So voting out is one, making sure they are impeached is one, recalling them is one. I mean, these people live among us. Putting pressure on them is another. But then when they see that the citizens as well, they are relaxed, they know that there are no consequences. So they just go ahead and do whatever they want to do. Thank you, ma'am.
So Reno, I ask you a question that's correlated to that. Why do you think that citizens have a collective action problem? They know that they are similarly badly treated by the ruling class, and yet they can't forge significant movements that stay sustained. For example, you managed to forge one with EndSARS. What is the next level for EndSARS? Are you finding a common purpose around that at this time?
Thank you, ma'am. I think that question is like two divided into one. Why haven't citizens been able to form themselves together and make sure that their movement is sustainable? Is it Benjamin who said something, a popular African fighter that said one thing, that I'm fighting for Africans. I'm using one hand to fight and using the other one to hold Africans back from fighting me. So it's like we have we've looked at corruption, we've looked at bad leadership, and we've normalized it. So we suspect each other as well. I don't know the word for it, but then I know that Madam Carr is trying to fight for me, yet I'm suspecting her. Like, is she collecting money from me? Why are you doing this? Why are you being so nice? Because my leaders, for a very long time, for decades, for years, they've treated us so bad. So why are you trying to be nice to us? I'm suspecting you. It's like you have collected money from them to be nice to us. So we suspect each other, and we do not seem to realize that some people just have good intentions of making the country better, or the nation better. So we also engage in fighting those that are supposed to be bettering the nation. That's one part that we've not been able to form sustainable movement, because we have been, I don't know, we've been so is it, I don't want to use the word that we're now sort of immune. No, it's not immune. Like, we're used to it, the fact that we don't trust anybody anymore. And to form a sustainable movement or a mass movement, there has to be some of cohesion. I mean, between the people, between the leaders, between those participating in that movement, that even if we have different we come from different parts of the country, different ethnicity, different religion, we have the same common goal. So the people have not been able to realize our common goal is what should be driving our mass movement forward. So if Dr. Obi wants some policies to be changed in governance, Dr. Kawala wants the roads to be fixed, and if I want good health care, so far we all detest police brutality, which NSAS is about, then we should be together. But then the people do not realize, they don't realize that when they think, well, she doesn't want health care because she wants good road. Even if she detests police brutality, like the same person, then we should fight each other, or somebody is being paid. And I think that where NSAS currently is that, sadly, repression works. A state has the capability and capacity to inflict cost on protesters more than they can get. And I think that the generation that participated in the NSAS were sort of naive. They didn't live through the military era. They didn't live through the era where people were being killed. So they weren't expecting that much repression, which came and which is still on. There's still protesters in prison. The Nigerian government is still making sure that the propaganda against the NSAS movement is still on. A lot of people are still being charged to court on bogus charges. So we didn't expect that repression. So I think the current state is, we are in trauma. That trauma state is slowly passing, but then we didn't expect that repression. So we're telling ourselves, oh, probably our movement failed. And I am also telling my participant, the people that participated in that movement, that I participated alongside with, saying the movement did not fail. Your government attacked the movement with guns, with propaganda, with a lot of things that were imaginable for you guys. So currently, the spirit is still on, but then the repression was sadly too much for the participants of that movement to bear. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Look, we're now to the end of our conference, at least the segment of the conference. I want to ask the two of you. My hope lies in three things: the young people, the women, and technology. What are your own three things?
I would just add on to those three things, Dr. Obi. One, so Renu, this traumatization is general on the continent, and we have to realize that 60 years of oppression is trauma. And so we do have to give our people time. So I would add on to that the time to build continuously. We've been under oppression for over 60 years. It won't go away in 1 second. So time, organization, and strategy. We are up against a system, national and international. We have to be strategic.
So on my hand, I think that The first thing is resilience. We have to understand the fact that we can't give up at some point in time. Like Madam Obi will say, it's not just a one-time thing, it's a continuous effort. So one is resilience. The second, I'm going to take from Madam Obi, is young people. I so much believe in the strength of young people and what they can do. And the third is getting justice, not justice for the 1%, but justice for the common man. So I think that's a third thing. Thank you, ma'am.
So, ladies and gentlemen, those who have stayed with us, we hope that you benefited from listening to this conversation. One thing is certain, from the 3 women out of Africa that you listened to, our vote is for democracy. 1. Second, our vote is for democracy with citizens at the center of it. The third is that we are not waiting for the world to come and save us. We're simply saying we will do everything to try to save ourselves, but we find it objectionable that the world makes it in any way more difficult when it does not take on the responsibility and duty of punishing bad behavior when it happens on the part of our ruling class. Fourth, we are hopeful. We see that hope in people like Reno. We see it in people like Ka. We have no doubt that ultimately our democracy will be earned by the African people, with the women at the center, at the side, at the front, at the back of it. There will be no exclusion of women in our democratic culture that we want to breed amongst ourselves as Africans. And we can assure one thing, if we can get our democracy right, economic policy choices will deliver faster growth to us and reduce poverty and convert us to peaceable, prosperous continent. Nobody saw China coming 40 years ago. Nobody saw India coming 30 years ago. Nobody can see Africa coming with its women, its young people, and technology. We thank you for listening to us during this segment, and we wish you the best for the rest of the conference. Thank you very much. Thank you, Renu. Thank you, Ka.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, all of you, for joining us and providing this great insight. So for everyone else at the conference, feel free to go and join the keynote speaker, who is going to start talking any moment now. But thank you, Dr. Obi, Ka, and Renu, for this great start to our day. All of you are inspirations in your work, and we look forward to supporting you how we can.
Thank you. Thank you.